We're going to stick with the theme. It's going to be the major theme of the day, which is prospects for Kosovo, for the Western Balkans, in the context of Europe and the world over the coming years, and given the quite seismic events we're seeing around us at the moment, not least elections in the European Union, and of course events further north in Ukraine, to the east in the Middle East. There's a lot going on, there's a lot of upheaval. So our next session really is about how we embed development and progress in the region, and what some of the political risks are that we confront as we try to do that, and perhaps what we can do about some of those risks, how we should approach them. And I'm really pleased to have a fabulous panel for you in this session. I'm going to invite them up now to join me on the stage. And first is Tomáš Szunyog, who is the ambassador, the head of the EU office in Kosovo, the EU special representative. Please come and take a seat. Choose any seat, but if you sit in the order that I bring you up, that makes it so much easier for me. Peter Tabak, who is the lead regional economist for the Western Balkans at the EBRD. Peter, nice to see you. Visar Perani, who is the country officer for Kosovo and North Macedonia at the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank. Visar, nice to see you. Joost Kuhlmann, who is the economic advisor and DG at ECOFIN, the European Commission. Joost, you're very welcome. And Domagoj Juricic, who is a political risk management senior consultant. That only tells half the story. He's also a former chief of staff to the president of Croatia. Welcome, gentlemen, all gentlemen on this occasion. Now, let's hand over straight off first thing to Tomáš Szunyog, who is the ambassador, head of the EU office in Kosovo. Your introductory words, your thoughts, please.
Well, thank you, and really glad to be here and have the opportunity to address such a distinguished conference and audience. I would just decided to focus on the growth plan, which is actually a new instrument of European Union for the Western Balkans. And I would like to introduce this with three comments. One is that actually European Commission published every year the annual report. In the last year, in November 23, this annual report, there was also a very interesting, in this annual report, there was an interesting graph actually showing the level of convergence between the Western Balkans and the European Union. And actually this graph was not really very encouraging, because if you look at the picture, the curve is relatively flat and there is not enough of convergence between the EU level of economic development and the Western Balkans. Just some figures: if you take EU 27 as 100%, the richest country in the region is Montenegro, actually reaching 50% of the EU average. The poorest country of the region is Kosovo, with 27% of EU average. This is obviously not sufficient to withstand the pressure of the single market and to be a full-fledged member of European Union. So that's the reason why the Commission came with the proposal, which was accepted also by the Council and European Parliament, and we have this new growth plan. The second thing I would say is that actually the first time the proposal was made was in October last year, and in last month, in May, we already have the finalized program. So this is actually unique, it's very fast, and it also demonstrates the political will to assist Western Balkans integration into European Union. It's a really incredible speed. People were doubting it can be achieved, also because of the shortened mandate of the European Parliament, but we did it, and we have the growth plan, and I think it's an important achievement. The third point I would like to underline is that the growth plan comes above the current assistance. So we still have EPA, we are continuing to have EPA, and so this is a kind of top-up for our existing assistance, which already is making European Union by far the biggest donor to the region. So we are ready to increase that, and we are ready to move on and to increase the speed of economic convergence with the Western Balkans. So the structure, if speaking about the structure of the growth plan, it consists of 4 independent mutually reinforcing pillars. The first pillar tackles economic integration and the EU single market. The second pillar aims at enhancing regional cooperation through the common regional market based on the EU rules and standards, which could potentially add 10 percentage points to the growth of respective economies. The third pillar looks in ways to accelerate reforms, supporting the Western Balkans path towards the EU membership. And the fourth pillar entails financial assistance of €6 billion to incentivize these reforms through a reform and growth facility for the Western Balkans for the period of 2024-2027. There are some general preconditions for EU support under the reform and growth facility. These include the partners continue to uphold effective democratic mechanism, include a multi-party parliamentary system, free and fair elections, pluralistic media, independent judiciary, rule of law, as well as respect for human rights, including the minority rights. For Serbia and Kosovo, the special precondition is that they engage constructively with measurable progress and tangible results in the normalization of their relation, which is in the dialogue. I want to welcome that Kosovo has recognized the opportunities offered and has taken a great deal of ownership. In preparing the reform agenda, the government has been working hard with our colleagues, both in Brussels and in my office, to make sure that we select the key drivers for social economic growth and that we have a good level of ambition. The government has been fully engaged in this, has met all the deadlines by submitting the first complete draft reform agenda on 27 May, and the cooperation has been overall very good. Therefore, I want to thank Kosovo authorities and the government in particular for the work undertaken so far. The EU Commission, from its side, has made an ambition proposal with 7 initial priority areas and the supporting measures, including the one mentioned by the US ambassador on single European payment area. It will require a great deal of homework from beneficiaries in terms of aligning with the EU acquis, taking the necessary steps, and preparing the necessary institutions within ambitious timelines. The preparation is also underway for the Common Regional Market Action Plan, which is interlinked with the Berlin process and is being ready for the Summit of Berlin process in October. It is essential that the action plan corresponds to the needs, interests, and ambitions of all regional governments, and that they all contribute with proposals to this regard. It's essential, too, that current obstacles in the functioning of the common regional market are resolved. I have to mention that 9 initiatives for market liberalization, fully prepared on technical level, are blocked by the Central European Free Trade Agreement Joint Committee. The selection of the new CEFTA director, which started more than 1 year ago, is proceeding very slowly. I want to call on all partners to work constructively and pragmatically to arrive at the mutually beneficial outcomes. I want to stress this link. Access to the EU's single market goes through common regional market and the economic integration within the region. For regional economic integration to succeed, it is imperative that the Western Balkan countries work closely together. Only together, the region managed to exploit its full potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Peter, straight along to you.
Thank you. So we heard a lot about the importance of faster convergence, faster growth for the region, and especially Kosovo, since Kosovo
Could you lean a little bit into your mic so everybody can hear you?
Still has a lot to catch up compared to some other countries in the region. And this growth also has to be inclusive, as the Prime Minister emphasized. So it has to involve youth, it has to involve more women employment, also the employment of disadvantaged parts of the population. This growth has been quite fast, as also the Prime Minister mentioned. In the past 10 years, Kosovo managed to grow by around 4.4%, above that of the Western Balkans. But still, with this relatively fast growth, the convergence was very, very slow. And how to accelerate convergence? That is the main question. And in fact, me and my co-authors have just published a paper which was looking at what are the prerequisites for the Western Balkans countries to converge faster to the EU income averages, which is available on the EBRD website. And this paper is basically suggesting a three-pronged approach. So first of all, the convergence of the Western Balkans, including Kosovo, has slowed down after the global financial crisis in 2009. And this has been mainly due to the slowdown of the productivity growth. So while employment has grown in this period, and that's good, that's very important, productivity has more or less stalled. So now the main focus has to be on how to improve productivity in the region. And productivity improvement requires technological improvements, which usually comes the easiest through foreign direct investment, through more sophisticated technologies invested by those investors who are part of the global value chains. This is helping in many ways. It's helping integrating the country into these global value chains. Also, it is helping to broaden the markets. Kosovo, as other Western Balkans countries, is a very small country, very small market. Altogether, the Western Balkans is just around 70 million people. So it makes sense to aim at a much bigger market, be it the regional market in the Western Balkans or the European Union or the world market as well. And these global value chains and foreign direct investment is helping the access to these markets. For this to happen, of course, the business environment has to improve, as it was mentioned by the ambassadors before. Easier regulations, easier licensing of certain activities would be very important, as well as the faster transfer of goods through the borders, because it's still too difficult to do in the Western Balkans. Another factor which would be important is greening the economy. So we heard from the Prime Minister that there are plans to increase, to start auctions, tenders for renewable investments, but it has to be done much faster. It has to involve the private sector fully, because the private sector is able to flexibly and fast and move fast in this area and offer the most efficient solutions for this, as it was the case in Albania, where these tenders for solar renewable energy investments have already been successful in the past. Last but not least, the governance is very important. So it's important to mention that rule of law and democracy has relatively good ratings in Kosovo, but what needs to be improved further is the state-owned enterprise governance. State-owned enterprises are an important part of the economy in the Western Balkans. They are providing elementary services from telecommunications to energy to private companies, and if these services are not priced properly, if the quality of services is not good enough, then the private sector is suffering from this. So state-owned enterprises have to be governed in a way that they have a transparent operation, they are working efficiently, and they are not influenced by political decisions. So the politics can decide about what type of activities they have to do as public service. They have to agree on public service contracts with them, but the management of these companies has to be similar like for the private companies in order to make them more efficient. If these things are going ahead, of course, together with the improvement in education and health services, then Kosovo has good chances to increase its growth rates and convergence to the EU income average. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter Tabak. On to Visar Perani from the IFC at the World Bank. Your thoughts, please.
Thank you. Very good to be here and very nice to talk about the topic. Coming from the IFC and more private sector of the World Bank Group, I would like to say that going back to what was said initially by both prime ministers and Lord Robertson, etc., the political stability is crucial for any private sector development. I have met in my years in IFC many potential investors from abroad. We always discuss about financial models, projections, you name it, but we end up usually in discussing politics towards the end of the discussion because we cannot really avoid it. So that's why fundamental for us, for the country, for the region, is political stability. Otherwise, we will not see the FDIs which we badly need in the country for the growth. As mentioned by others, numbers are looking good for Kosovo. We have the best numbers in the region in averages, but for sure the convergence to the EU is pretty far. And also we are like maybe 3 decades away from EU countries in the neighborhood. Never mind the most developed countries in Europe. So that's why for sure 4.4 last 10 years or 6 last couple of years, it's a great number, but definitely we are, it will take our decades to achieve where our neighboring countries, EU neighboring countries are. That's why we need really to push even much harder into economic development. One way to do is the regional cooperations by all means, because countries in the Balkans, including Kosovo, are in general small. Our firms are rather small, so it would make very basic common sense to cooperate between the countries or between the companies in order to be stronger together and to enter the EU market in more robust ways. Not that we don't have exports. Kosovo or the region doesn't have export to EU, but for sure we can do much more together, I believe, because scale definitely helps. And then when we have this EU integration in mind, which is our end goal for all of us, I believe that the mindset is there. We are ready to cooperate. We are ready to support each other, and we are ready to undertake the reforms that we need to do in order to achieve this joint goal for joining European Union one beautiful day for all of us. Let me give you some clear examples because I'm coming in from private sector and we want the reforms that we are doing here in the country together with government are really tangible or are practical, and this is what we have been doing as IFC globally, not only in Kosovo, and we are bringing the best experience from all over the world, from more than 100 countries where we operate. And I've said this to many people in the government, to private sector clients, to authorities, that oftentimes I believe countries like Kosovo need more of our experience, our brain, than just money. Money, we can pour money, but if you don't know what to do with it, it's going to be kind of difficult. Money is not solution to everything. So that's why we try to bring experience to do advisory projects which are definitely in line with the EU rules, EU procedures, EU values, in order to speed up the economic, always focused of course in private sector development. One concrete example which I would like to share with you, it was mentioned by my EBRD colleagues about transportation. It's us living and working in Kosovo, the region, we know how the borders looks like and how the obstacles we have for the transportation. The procedures in the past were between few hours, in the best case, and then you could last up to a few days. You have to park your trucks, you have to park your goods in the border for days, you have to do everything manually, paperwork, etc. And of course, they are prone to mistakes on purpose or without purpose, but anyhow, everything is very manual, costly, and our firms which are already small cannot be really competitive with the larger firms in the region, but definitely in EU. So one of the projects we have been doing together with Ministry of Finance is National Single Window, something which exists in Europe for many years, where we have tried to simplify all the procedures for border passing, for transport, for trade. It's called Trade Facilitation Project, the National Single Window. Now it's being handed over to our colleagues from the World Bank, which will continue the implementation. And one beautiful day, in my eyes, I think in say 2-3 years from now, if everything goes smoothly, of the border passing for trade in our country, in the whole region. Sorry, I should have said this. This is a regional project. It's not only a project for Kosovo. The transportation between the countries should look more or less like in European Union, literally. For sure, we're going to have the borders. We are not yet there, but we're going to have maybe checking of documents, etc., but not really checking the goods and these kind of things which we took and cost a lot for the private sector. So this is something which I'm really proud of. It's being run, and it's a regional project which brings and sends a signal to EU, to Brussels, that we are ready, we are moving along, and we are doing changes, even though we are not in EU, but we are doing changes, and our borders will look in the near future as if they are a EU member. Another thing which is a recent project which has started less than a year ago, again a regional project, has to do with what was said in the past about the greening of economy, about environmental, about sustainable growth, etc. We are talking about FDIs, we're talking about exports to European Union, but we all know that in very few years from now, European Union will start imposing taxes for our exports. So knowing Kosovo has like 90% of energy produced by, by coal, this will be a big issue for our exporters. So what IFC has done regionally with a new project, which has, by the way, financed by EU, by WBF, it's about ecological parks, industrial parks. I mean, the desk assessment which was done by my colleagues have found out that there are like around 300 industrial parks in the Western Balkans, 300. All of them built many, many years ago, decades ago. But none of them, literally none of them, fulfills the conditions to be called ecological. So the new project that we are launching now, we have had meetings with the Pristina city, with the central government. They are very interested to work together to build ecological industrial park that fulfills all the criteria. So before we start building anything and get it ready for the private sector, we have to take care about waste management, water treatment, energy supply, noise, pollution, etc. And then in this way, we try to combine our efforts, our experience, and local needs, and to create something which is concrete. And then local firms from Kosovo can operate there, can produce and export to EU without any harms and without any tariffs, which are foreseen to be imposed, but also to bring FDIs. FDIs will not come from Germany to invest in Kosovo if they will be producing with energy produced by coal, because they will have huge taxes. So I just took these two examples as what we can do very practically, without nice and big words, but practically to help the private sector development in the country. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you very much. Joost Kuhlmann from your economic advisor at the European Commission. Your thoughts, please.
Okay. First, thanks for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts on the Western Balkans with this distinguished forum and audience. Now, in considering how to drive stability and development in the Western Balkans in conjunction with the European Union's growth plan, I will focus on the economic and financial aspects. It fits with my background as a macroeconomist and my experience gained at the Commission department I'm working for. I obviously recognize that there are many different other dimensions, political, social, that are equally and potentially more important in driving stability and development, but I think that others are better placed to discuss them. So as an economist, I think of driving stability and development in the Western Balkans, I would naturally start with the importance of macroeconomic stability as an essential foundation for any durable economic development. Macroeconomic stability, in turn, requires disciplined and predictable budgetary policies by the government and disciplined monetary policies by the central bank. The European Commission and the European Central Bank provide regular assessments on macroeconomic, fiscal and financial trends and challenges. This happens as part of the regular economic and financial dialogue of the European Union with the Western Balkan partners, linked to their economic reform programs. In the context of this dialogue, policy recommendations to steer macro-fiscal reforms and thus also ensure macro stability in the partner countries are jointly agreed. This was the last time just done in the middle of May. And when I think of economic development, I would think of an optimal use of the factors of production, such as capital and labor, their further growth over time, and their increasingly more optimal combination leading to higher productivity growth. And here we come essentially to issues such as competition, market integration, and structural reforms. This is where the growth plan for the Western Balkan fits in with its 4 pillars. The first pillar, as the ambassador already said, is about enhancing economic integration with the European Union's single market, with the Western Balkans aligning to single market rules and opening the relevant sectors and areas to all their neighbors at the same time, in line with the common regional market. 7 priority actions are suggested within this first pillar. First, free movement of goods. Second, free movements of services and workers. Third, access to the single European payments area. Fourth, facilitation of road transport. Fifth, integration and decarbonization of energy market. Sixth, the digital single market. And seventh, the integration into the industrial supply chain. The second pillar is about boosting economic integration within the Western Balkans through the common regional market. It is vital to overcome small fragmented markets, make businesses more competitive, attract investors and retain workers. Based on the European Union rules, it is a stepping stone to the opportunities of the single market. The third pillar is about accelerating fundamental reforms, including on the fundamentals cluster, supporting Western Balkans' path towards European Union membership, improving sustainable economic growth, including through attracting foreign investments and through strengthening regional stability. And finally, the fourth pillar is about increasing financial assistance to support the reforms through a reform and growth facility for the Western Balkans for the period 2024-2027. A new instrument worth 6 billion euros, consisting of 2 billion euros in grants and 4 billion euros in concessional loans, with payments conditioned on the Western Balkans partners fulfilling specific socio-economic and fundamental reforms. You will recognize that this approach mirrors the one we earlier took with the Recovery and Resilience Fund, so to make payments conditional on actually achieving the reforms. So the background has already been mentioned. The European Commission launched the growth plan in November 23 as it considered that deep structural reforms to lift the economic potential of the region have been advancing too slowly. The Western Balkans currently stand at between 35% and 50% of the average per capita GDP of the European Union. The aim of the growth plan is to bring the Western Balkans partners closer to the European Union. It aims to do so by offering some of the benefits of European Union membership to the region in advance of accession, thereby boosting economic growth and accelerating socio-economic convergence. As part of the growth plan, every Western Balkan partner was invited to prepare a reform agenda based on European Union recommendations and consistent with national reform priorities. The reform agendas will be consulted with, assessed by and adopted by the European Commission. This important work is currently undergoing and will be completed in the next few weeks. With increased financial assistance that is closely linked to actual reform implementation, the growth plan could provide a powerful incentive for the Western Balkan partners to address long-standing weaknesses that have been preventing a faster catching up with the European Union. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Joost. And then onward, finally, last but not least, as they say, Domagoj Juricic, specialist in political risk.
Well, it seems to me I'm the only one with the PowerPoint, huh? Hope it will be interesting.
You're the consultant.
Yeah. We consultants do love a PowerPoint, so this is the one for you that will be left after I finish my speech and my presentation. So I'm truly honored, ladies and gentlemen, good day to you all. I'm truly honored to be here to speak to this distinguished audience. Today, I will lay out some political risks challenging the stability and development of the Western Balkans. This region, we all know, is at the critical crossroads. Your ability, but as well ability of the EU to manage political risks will either drive progress or hinder it. So as we navigate this intricate landscape, it is imperative to comprehend the key factors at play. Back in 2014, at a summit hosted by the same group organizing today's event, I made a prediction that, although intriguing, was dismissed as far-fetched. Since then, everything I stated there has materialized. This is the harsh reality we are all facing. Nevertheless, this is a good news. Why? Because we recognize those challenges. We know this is what we are facing today and in the future. The bad news would be an empty slide. It would show our ignorance towards the challenges. So let's consider the geopolitical uncertainties. The elections for the European Parliament will, for sure, impact EU policies towards the Western Balkans. In the United States, the presidential elections could and will influence the country's stance of multilateralism and international cooperation. Additionally, the growing influence of China and Russia in the region adds another layer of complexity. So, in a world of shifting alliances, the Western Balkans must navigate very carefully to maintain stability and foster development. Migration pressures are testing the limits of European unity. EU countries are strained due to the migration, leading to policy fatigue. There is a growing reluctance towards the further EU enlargement affecting the prospects of Western Balkans countries. Increasing xenophobia, populism with the EU pose additional threats to regional stability. Migration crises are testing the limits of European unity and could significantly impact the Western Balkans. You will have to take that into account. Domestically, political instability poses significant challenges. Frequent government changes create an environment of uncertainty and hinder long-term planning. Corruption remains a pervasive issue, undermining governance and public trust. Ethnic tensions further fragment the political landscape, complicating efforts for national cohesion. Internal stability is fundamental for regional development, and addressing these issues is really crucial. Organized crime is another critical challenge impacting political stability and public trust. Economic vulnerabilities, such as dependence on foreign aid and the young workforce leaving the region in search of better prospects in the West, further exacerbate the situation. Inconsistent economic policies contribute to an unstable monetary environment. Organized crime and economic fragility are twin challenges that must be addressed to ensure regional stability and development. So what's the way forward? Definitely strengthening democratic institutions and the rule of law is essential to mitigate political risks. Encouraging regional cooperation and reconciliation can foster a more stable environment. Engaging with international partners to support will also be crucial. The path to stability and development lies in resilience and reform. By addressing these risks strategically, the Western Balkans can achieve lasting stability. Many of the points I've raised today are familiar. They are reminders of the challenges that we have long recognized. However, acknowledgement of these political risks is just the beginning. The EU must integrate the Western Balkans to enhance regional stability, strengthen geopolitical influence, foster economic growth, and reinforce its credibility and cohesion. What you need individually and states and collectively as a region is a sharp assessment of the risks and opportunities ahead. This summit is also an opportunity to turn challenges into a blueprint for progress. So I hope our discussion will help achieving that as well. Thank you for your attention. I'm eager to hear the perspectives and ideas that will emerge from our conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, we've heard from our 5 speakers. I am struck by the fact that we have 5 international speakers representing, in a number of cases, multilateral institutions whose responsibility is to hand out recipes, if you like, for development and as well as handing out resources, which I'm sure are always equally welcome. So it does strike me that it may be that there are questions in the room that you have for our panelists. And if that's the case, I'm happy to make room for those. I'm not sure we're set up particularly for that, but I'm sure we'll find a way. So if you have questions for our panelists, I'm going to ask a couple myself now. But I'll invite you to ask those questions at some point, so be ready when that moment comes. I mean, we've heard a lot about what's on offer to the region in terms of support from multilateral institutions, from the region, from the European Union, etc., as well as some of the challenges. I'm interested in the capacity of the region and of Kosovo to absorb all of that advice on the one hand and financial resources on the other. I mean, you know, that touches on, a lot of you have already touched on this, the challenges in terms of convergence on policy here in the region. But I'm interested specifically in looking at that, because it can come across as very technical. You know, you say that we have this plan, we have these resources, we have this proposal, and I'm sure that in the region it can feel very much like an avalanche of opportunity that comes their way. What are the challenges in terms of absorption, and what is the likelihood that the plans that you've set out can be implemented? Let's start with you.
Well, thank you for this question. I would actually argue there are two challenges to what we call absorption capacity. One challenge is that very often, as mentioned, there is this change of government. So very often those new governments basically believe everything which was done by the previous government is wrong and need to kind of redraw the thing. So obviously this is a challenge, and I think that this is also kind of suggesting that there is not enough of political consultation across the political spectrum to actually agree on those kind of national priorities, basically, regardless of who is in the government. But yeah, I mean, this is a challenge in Kosovo. The elections, general elections, are scheduled for either later this year or early next year. We will see how this will develop. But again, this is something which needs to be overcome by some early dialogue among the political parties, actually, what actually are those priorities. And obvious, from looking from outside, there are obvious priorities. If you look at the infrastructure, you still are not connected very well by kind of high-quality roads, railways, airline connections. Those are things which have been missing. I mean, if you want to travel, let's say, from here to Sarajevo, it either 8 hours by a car or flying to Vienna and Vienna from Vienna back to Sarajevo. So that's kind of just, you know, that doesn't make a sense. It's 350 kilometers. And again, there is a railway connection. You know, there is no railway, passenger railway connection in Kosovo at all, even though there is a network, but it's not functional. The second issue, which is there, it's more technical, and this is the quality of public administration. And again, it's all the countries in the region, with maybe some exception, are relatively young, relatively new, and have no good tradition of administrating the capacity, have no good transition of independent public service which would be able to kind of administer properly the thing. So, and again, from our perspective, as I mentioned in my kind of speech, the only way how you can actually do that is through regional integration, because again, you just cannot do this individually in 6 countries, which the overall population, I think, less than 20 million people. So I think that one thing would be actually, and that's also why there is this new actually International School of Public Administration just recently kind of started in, I think, Montenegro. But again, this is a challenge we need to overcome together.
Okay, Peter, fairly briefly, your thoughts here, please, on this issue of absorption from the EBRD's perspective.
My colleague Sergei Maslichenko will be talking much more because he's on the ground and he knows much more. But I would pick up on what Mr. Szunyog mentioned. So basically the professionalization of the public administration would be really very important. And isolation a bit from the political influences, because basically our projects are on the technical level, so they should continue regardless of who is in power. They are helping the country to improve the infrastructure, they are helping the country to improve the governance of the public enterprises, and so on and so forth. So basically it should be independent of the government, and that's why this professional public administration is very important to continue working whenever these projects are ongoing. And these would be helping a lot in the future also in this increasing the economic growth, attracting the private sector investors. If they see this political stability, that they can work with the public administration regardless of who is in power, that would help a lot for attracting more private investment.
Thank you. And Visar, from the IFC perspective, how do you make sure that the programs that you're making available and promoting are aligned with the capacity of the countries and the region to absorb them?
Yeah, I mean, our experience is mixed. It's correct what was said by Ambassador, that the early elections in the past, or way too often elections, were a bit of hassle because we had projects being extended without no real reason, actually. But because of change of the cabinets usually, not just particular minister, but etc., elections lose time. But in general, our experience has been good, to be frank, especially with the recent government, because we have really political stability and we can run the projects, and they are like moving on time. We have no delays or any issues. I mean, I've seen projects from IFC, from my colleagues from the World Bank, from others. I think the fundamental, and talking also to people in government, in previous government, current government, I think the fundamental to make a project being successful is to have the buy-in from government. Sometimes I feel, either be it central government or local government or say authorities like central bank, etc. Sometimes I feel that they don't have the huge interest in the project that we are proposing, and then things go slow. But when you propose something which is concrete, which is like really good for the country and for the people, I think, and you have the buy-in, I think things really move smoothly. Because you see clear discrepancy between the projects which are moving super fast and then projects which should take 2 years, they last for 4 years. But buying from government is like a fundamental solution, and it works. In general, we have been very pleased so far.
Okay. Just very briefly again for you, Visar.
Please.
What sectors is the IFC focusing on in the projects that it's funding here in the region?
Because of the needs of the region, including Kosovo, of course, renewable energy and energy transition, green transition is most important. This is written in our documents that we have together with the World Bank. We have one document called CPF, Country Partnership Framework, which outlines what we are doing. Definitely, this is one of the key components, and we will do much more. It's a region in renewables for next decade, I would say, including the energy strategy that was implemented recently, approved recently by government of Kosovo. Something else which we are really trying to focus is access to finance, enable the poorer and the smaller to have access to finance, and this is something very important in our genes to really help the smaller. So we do it definitely through financial intermediation. But then also, as I said earlier, I mean, I love these advisory projects because it's not about money all the time. Money is there for sure, is a mean, but we need to bring experience and expertise from all over the world to do changes which are again in line with EU mission and vision. And EU values at the end of the day, we are all Europeans, and that's why I love personally to bring much more advisory projects to help government to structure things, to do necessary reforms, and then we have the reforms and money comes, be it from us, from other donors, from EU, from everybody else.
Great, thank you. Joost, what are your thoughts here? Is there anything you want to add?
Well, I think it's a very valid question. But it goes beyond, indeed, the purely financial aspects. By the way, we are making experience right now with the Recovery and Resilience Fund, where we have a similar approach. Member states do reforms, and then they get payments based on those, but it's not always an easy ride, and there may be, different expectations. There may actually be bottlenecks in implementing these reforms. So it's crucial, as I think previous speakers mentioned, to have the administrative capacity, the government capacity to get up to a higher speed. I did some analysis, you know, as we are now entering a new commission, and I looked at the speed of reaching the Copenhagen economic criteria over the last 5 years, just to make a reflection on how likely it is that over the next 5 years we will be there. And it has been very, very, very slow. And if the past trends are an indication, the criteria will in most cases not be met over the next 5 years. And it is our stated aim, I think Commissioner Vaheli said so also, to have the enlargement at the end of this commission. So it is crucial to change speed, but it requires also a lot of investment from the local authorities here. And I think that is a real bottleneck. Apart from the pure financial, I think there to make this quantum leap, to kind of so to say to reach these goals faster, facilitated by extra carrots in the form of financial funds, but this really requires all attention, both by the Commission but also the member states here.
Domagoj, I want to change the question ever so slightly for you and use the fact that you represent a slightly different sector and you're from Croatia, so you're sort of the regional representative on the stage, if you like. That responsibility falls to you. So for you, I'd like to get an idea of how this all looks from the regional perspective. So when administrations in the Western Balkans are taking on this mentorship and leadership and advice from the global community and the European community, how is it viewed? Where is the motivation to close the gap to make sure that the outcomes that are being sought by the World Bank, the EBRD, etc., match with the national interest?
Thank you for that question. Well, I've been working on a lot of projects that are funded by the international institutions. And I don't want to be a party pooper, but I will give you the other side of the story. Yes, absorption capacity is the problem of administration, but it's due to many, many problems. But a lot of times I've been witnessing projects that are checkboxing and, you know, one size fits all. So I'm not pointing any fingers, don't get me wrong, esteemed gentlemen, but tailor-made projects are what you need to do. If something is implemented in Denmark and you think will be, you know, implemented here, you are so wrong that I cannot, you know, tell you how wrong you are. And insisting on doing the same at different places is a lot of times what is getting us nowhere. So tailor-made projects, deep understanding of the country where you are and what sort of help you are giving is what you have to do. I'm dealing with the projects, for example, of removing administrative barriers, regulatory reforms, and so on and so on. And I find out that one-size-fits-all approach is really leading to disaster. What you have a client country that is basically unhappy with the result of the project. You have a donor that is unhappy with the results, and us as a consultants frustrating as hell, trying to balance between two. So yeah, absorption capacity is a problem. What I hear from the prime ministers or leaders of the project is, give me something that is tailor-made for me. Listen to me more. Listen, you know, I've been on meetings where, for example, prime minister would say, or minister of economy, this is what we need, and the other side would say, no, 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 this is what you're going to get. We have to abolish that approach.
Excellent. Okay, well, I did promise that I would give you an opportunity to put your questions if there are any. So now's the moment to raise your hand if you have a question for anybody up here on the stage. If you don't worry about it, because I've got plenty. But just in case there are any questions, I'd like to give you the opportunity to offer those. We have a gentleman here at the front. Identify yourself, David. You've got a microphone here. Or you can just shout it and I'll...
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll reserve my voice for later. So thanks for giving me the opportunity. I'm David from Roland Berger, the German-based consultancy. My question is basically, we see that China is stretching its fingers across the globe, not just across the global south, but also across various other countries of interest, which are of course also countries in the Western Balkans, as we all know. Is there a clear strategy, especially from the, I would call them, Western-based institutions, how to change strategies to more effectively and efficiently counter these efforts? This question would mainly go to the representatives of the Western institutions.
Okay, well, if everybody answers very briefly, then we'll get round everyone, but let's start with you.
I think, speaking on behalf of EU, in Kosovo, I think that Kosovo is specific in a sense that since it has not been recognized by China, our perception is that actually Chinese influence and Chinese presence in Kosovo is minimal and not very visible. So that's probably is different from other countries in the region. But I believe we do have a strategy. I think it's already 5 years or even more when the EU developed the strategy of how to deal with China. But also we have a specific strategy dealing with China in the region. So I think that there is a kind of way how to do it. And obviously there are two sides of this. One is how to make us more attractive as partners, but also look and make sure that when Chinese projects are being implemented here, that they are compatible with EU standards, and that it actually kind of helps to kind of let's say infrastructure and other, but it needs to be according to EU standards.
Peter.
Yes, it's important that the EU approach is changing, and it takes more and more into account how China is behaving in the region. And basically it also helps that with EU grant funding to large infrastructure projects, we can be more competitive with the Chinese offers and offering better value to the countries. In the long term, I think those competitive offers which are coming through the international financial institutions are definitely better value than those offers, those bilateral offers which are not tendered, and basically there is no choice of the country with whom it wants to complete these projects. But grant funding is very important for these large projects, otherwise these countries cannot afford to do these projects.
Visar.
China is an important member in our institution by all means. So I don't think that we have a specific policy about China itself individually. But I agree with Ambassador, of course, and being local here, Chinese presence in the country because of politics again, not because of business, is really super limited. So I mean, maybe not super relevant for us as a country, but hopefully in the near future when we will get membership in UN, EU, things might change.
Joost?
Well, of course, remember that Ursula von der Leyen said at the beginning of her mandate this will be a geopolitical commission. I think little did she know as the additional challenges we would get in later years, including with war, so it has become even more geopolitical. And it's, of course, against this background that the whole growth plan was conceived, to give a better and more appealing perspective to the Western Balkans to really look to the European Union as your privileged partner of the future. Nothing more to say than that.
Okay, thank you. Domagoj, briefly.
Well, it seems to me that we are a bit late to the party. We should have never let, as the EU, Montenegro go to the debt to the Chinese because of the building of the infrastructure. Ionian Adriatic Highway should have been built long ago. With such projects, Europe would have say this is ours. But unfortunately, it did not happen. So you have now disruptive elements in the region. and with a lot of promises and putting finger on the candidate country, saying you are the only reason why you are not a member, is a wrong thing to do. I think we are in this together, and Europe has to have strategic interests beyond acquis communautaire. And this is what this crisis is showing us. Europe didn't have that. We were all about standards and meeting the requests, but strategic idea of what is Europe, what it is that belonged to us was never there. And that's the problem. And now we have third elements here, Chinese, Russians, and others, trying to preserve a status quo, trying to put this region in a state of frozen conflict that you might play with whenever it's necessary.
Wonderful, thank you very much. I'm going to, thanks very much for the question, by the way. It was an excellent question. We could have had a panel on it quite easily. Maybe we will next time. I want to finish off with developing, actually, Domagoj, from your last answer. And that is, we've discussed, and it's emerged very clearly from our discussion, that integration with Europe is critical. It is perhaps the critical driver of the future for this region. That being the case, is it time for the European Union perhaps to relax a little and to offer more compromise in the conditions it's setting? Is it more urgent to get that integration moving than it is to make sure there is, by every letter of the acquis compliance? Peter, I'm going to give this to you to start with, but do please be brief. Sorry, Peter. Domagoj.
I think it is. I think it is. This is a strategic decision, whether we want to leave this space as a black hole inside of the Europe. All around Western Balkans are the European countries, or whether we are ready to say, no, guys, let me bring you in. We have to find a way how to do it. Even in Europe, you have a Schengen space, you have monetary union, you have this and that. So basically, I think we have to find something that will fit both the Western Balkans countries so they feel they are in, and it will also, be something that secures the interest of Europe, not to have somebody in that doesn't meet the standards. So I think I would use more of a carrot rather than a stick to really encourage those countries for a change and make some programs and elements while they are in to foster reforms, to push for reforms, I don't know, by connecting into extraction of EU funds, no reforms, no money, for example.
Yeah.
Something like that. But strategically, I think everybody has to decide this is Europe too.
Joost, from inside the Commission, do you think the balance is correct at the moment?
Well, no, as I said, when I looked at the past, this study about the progress in meeting the Copenhagen criterion, it's very slow. If we are going in this way ahead, it will also be very slow, and basically you would not be able to conclude in a few years' time that everyone is ready. So from my technical, economic perspective, I would say something has to change if the political goal is to bring them in. Either this means kind of reinterpreting these criteria, indeed, maybe some compromise necessary, a bit more relaxed attitude, and or much more assistance, which is what we are doing through this growth plan, including to already giving access to the parts of the single market, to the SIPA, and fostering also regional integration. So this, I hope, will be a game changer to improve the preparedness on this side in close conjunction with Europe. So it has to probably be a combination, but yeah, obviously this is
okay.
A high political issue, which will also be decided by the new incoming Commission.
Yeah, I think that echoes what Matteo Renzi was saying earlier on today about the need for change in the EU's setup. But let's move to Visar, your thoughts briefly on this question.
Well, if you allow me, I would like to reply as a local, not just as IFC representative here. Living here, raising my kids here, definitely I would support such idea. I mean, it's not the first time that the EU has done exceptions, historically. They have done exceptions for other countries in the East when they joined. I don't think that they all met all the criteria by EU 20 plus years ago. And I think geopolitically and strategically, I think it's a good move by all means to have the Western Balkans joining EU, even though if we don't take all the boxes as mentioned previously. I mean, the will, and you can see statistics, and they are like public information, who wants to really join EU, and Kosovo is by far #1 in the region that really we want to, we feel Europeans, we are Europeans, we want to join European Union. So I don't think, if, European Union closes a bit of eyes and let, 2 million people of Kosovo join European Union, I don't think is a big hassle or big issue for anyone, or the same would be relevant for other countries. So fully supportive.
Thank you. Peter, briefly.
Experience shows that progress with the EU accession process is very important to keep support in the candidate or potential candidate countries for the EU accession. So basically, some flexibility is definitely needed, and much more support in progressing with the reforms which are necessary for the EU accession. And for this respect, the growth plan is very important because it is providing a very significant financial support. It is providing conditionality which is aiming at the key reforms which are necessary for the EU accession. But definitely, in the end, it will be a political decision which requires careful assessment and some flexibility, taking into account economic preparedness, but also the political context, when to let the Western Balkans join the EU.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And Tomáš, final word for you.
Well,
a brief one, if you would.
I would actually suggest to look beyond the Western Balkans because the enlargement is now actually one of the top priorities for EU, and I'm sure it will also be a priority for the next EU leadership. But the reason for that is actually also geopolitical and security one. We have actually, as a EU, decided to make enlargement part of our response to the war in Ukraine. I mean, we now are having Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia as the candidate countries. We are about to launch accession negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova. So we are on the verge of a seismic shift in EU and how the EU will look like. And given the size and given the problem and given the war, I think this process would be actually determined by our relationship with Ukraine. And this is simply obvious. And I think that the message for the Western Balkans is that, yes, we are going to enlarge. So this is the opportunity. Use this opportunity. Do everything to be part of that. I think this is the main message. There is also the other side of this coin, and this is actually for the first time ever in this European Commission annual report last year, but also the conclusions from December last year of European Council. You see enlargement and reforms of EU as a interlinked process. So it's because with the Western Balkans and with other, we have now 10 potential new members. So moving from 27 to maybe 37 would require a completely different setup of how you make the decisions. And so those are two processes. Again, the train is leaving the station, so I think it's important the Western Balkans is part of that.
Excellent. Well, with apologies to my panel, opening up a can of worms at the end there, we could easily have talked for the rest of the day about that, but thank you very much for your responses. Please join me in thanking our panel. Thank you.